Welcome everyone. I'm Anthony Kimble. This space is called Legacy on 14th Street. This is our office slash shared office space slash event space that we opened, I want to say like 3 years ago now. We bought this building some years back and then we developed it into this space. So this is our main working area. A lot of our interns work over here. We have our conference room there, admin area. We have on this side nine offices, and we have about 4 companies here. Storage area in the back, our fenced in where we store a lot of our equipment. So I do construction and development. So a lot of our projects are focused in this South Baton Rouge area. I've been doing development in this area now about 11, 12 years. I bought my first property here in this community. And we really opened this space, really looking at it as a community hub. It was really really to start really bringing businesses into this community as we start having developments like Lincoln Theater across the street, which we've helped with. We own Hotel Lincoln right off government, which will be an affordable housing development that hopefully will get started this year. We also own the big warehouse next to the train track and the city block there, amongst a host of probably 10, 12 houses in this neighborhood, and then some multifamily developments. So for us, this place, Legacy on 14th Street, really gave place for what the development we were doing within this community. As I said, we're really geographically focused within this community. And for myself, after college, graduated undergrad at Stanford, worked in the consultant world, so I was blessed to travel from Houston to Chicago to Miami to all these cities, and I saw what was going on in some of these inner city neighborhoods that have been de-invested over the last 50 to 60 years. So we're coming back home to Baton Rouge. I'm originally from a small town called Morganza by New Roads, but I grew up mostly in Baton Rouge, graduated from University High. Really was trying to do my part in redeveloping some of these inner city communities, and the community that we really kind of picked and we thought made the most sense was this neighborhood here. And our development really focuses from really Park Boulevard to the freeway. You can say Dalrymple all the way to I guess north. It's kind of the community that we really focus on developing, and it's been a journey. And as you guys know, with riding through this neighborhood is still transitioning. So it's been an exciting journey to be on, sometimes very frustrating with some of the, with trying to figure out who our partners are gonna be, getting local government to work with us and understand what we're trying to do, bringing nonprofits and businesses, getting folks to really believe in this neighborhood and what it can be. And I always tell people, like, we're not really looking to recreate the wheel in this community. This used to be a thriving community with a lot of, assets that are still there to rebuild this, to make this once again a thriving community. So we're just, with my company, Kimble Properties, we're just looking to play our part. And another big piece, if you guys can't tell, of telling this story is art. So this piece here was done by Wayne Dane, who's a guy from the neighborhood. And with this, we really just gave him the old South Baton Rouge book that Raymond Jetson and someone else, I forgot her name, that had developed, and told him just pick important people, important pieces out of this, neighborhood, and create this mural. So the original McKinley building, what the Butler Center used to look like, Dr. Butler, who's Lynn Winfield's grandfather, who used to be a doctor in the neighborhood, Eddie Robinson, Joe Delpit. Just wanted to, really develop artwork that really shined the light on some of the great figures and the great people, buildings and things that were once part of this neighborhood. The Butler Center, I want to say, had like a dentist office, post office. It used to be right across from the McKinley Alumni Center where that parking lot is now. So, we're looking at some of the things we do. We really look at the past and try to say, what are some of the resources that this community needs. And then we're looking at the front mural that was developed in conjunction with the Walls project. And what that mural for us really looked at was on the mirror panel far to the right was really represents the past greatness of this neighborhood. A lot of people don't know when Martin Luther King wanted to learn about bus boycotts and some of those things, he came and he met with Reverend Jemerson to discuss some of those things, and then went back to Alabama and had some of the did some of these things as far as boycotts and stuff. The middle panel for us really looks at what is the current state of this neighborhood when we first started developing over here. Blight, trash within the neighborhood, not really taking care of the neighborhood. And then this last panel, the door you guys walked in, represents for us what does the future look like of this neighborhood? How do we repurpose some of these things and some of these buildings? And this building is a prime example of that. This used to be a photography studio. Crazy enough, we bought this building and it was in this real disarray when we first bought it. Had furniture and stuff everywhere, hadn't been occupied in like 10 years. But we bought this building from a bank auction for like 40-something grand. And then, over the bought it like 7 years ago, I just held on and trying to figure out what does this building become. And then about 4 years ago, we started revitalizing this building, and we opened, I want to say October of 21 is when we opened this building. And we work out of here. We have 3 other companies that work out of here along with a nonprofit called Step Up Louisiana, company called Skill Type, a tech startup that works with library systems. My wife, her consultant company is out of this building, along with my development and my construction company. So that's just kind of the story, of what we do, who I am. I'm proud to be from Baton Rouge, and I really look like, thankful that every day, even when it's frustrating, that I really get to operate in my purpose as far as like revitalizing this community. And like we look at ourselves as really one part real estate developers, but we really look at what we do as community revitalization. How do we reconnect ecosystems? How do we tell the story of this neighborhood? How do we bring back the greatness of this neighborhood? So yeah, that's my story. I guess I'll open up for any questions anyone may have.
So I would love for you to expand on how this is part of the Buy Back the Block movement, and what the that's hard to say. Buy Back the Block movement is.
Yeah, so we have a real estate fund called Buy Back Baton Rouge, and in a lot of these inner city black neighborhoods around the company, you're kind of seeing this kind of theme of like buying back the block, redeveloping the block. And the truth of this, when you talk to a lot of people about neighborhoods like this, one of the first things that, the kind of like, this is the hood, you know what I mean? Is there, really, is there, a lot of value here? One part is I always tell, let's look at the story of like how this neighborhood became what it was, what became what it is now. And it's kind of a story that you see all around the country. Freeway system was built through the neighborhood. That really, in neighborhoods like this, destroyed the fabric of the neighborhood. And if you look at the Treme in New Orleans, Third Ward Houston, Midtown Atlanta, Oak Cliff, Dallas, kind of a theme that you see over and over, where through these thriving black communities, you've built these freeway systems. And then you look at the investment into these communities that have been made since, and it's disproportionate. When you look at the investment that has been made into the suburban communities over the last 50 years compared to communities like this, it's disproportionate. The biggest investment you've probably seen in this neighborhood over the last 50 years is the freeway. Something that actually went that really destroyed the fabric of the community and really broke the neighborhood up into 2 different parts. So with us, we just looked at it that we pooled money together to start bringing investment back into this neighborhood, start working with our banking partners to get them to understand the value in this neighborhood. And it's not always easy. And I'll tell you, like when we went to, after we did the construction of this building all cash, we put about $500,000 in this building. And when we first went to get it appraised for $390,000. We challenged that appraisal, you know, even went as far as making, you know, going to the appraisal board, and we were able to get that appraised. We went from $390,000 to $670,000 by just challenging the appraisal. And it's things like that that literally when I do projects and I go to get them appraised, I literally have a full report of like, you know, what are things in neighboring neighborhoods appraising for, how much money, you know, I work with other developers because, and one of the excuses the appraiser had is that he hadn't appraised a building near this community in 21 years. So it's like also when you have those lack of transactions, it's hard to like, you know, understand what the value is of these communities. And, you know, those are some of the things that like at times they're challenging, but you know, it also, it excites me to be the person to have to, you know, challenge those things and bring into community partners. Right now we're working with Metromorphosis and Raymond Jetson on building a community hub with telehealth resources and some other things within this community, because that's a big part of like also doing this type of work is understanding what the community needs and like what adds value in the community. What's, you know, a big piece that we've been talking about over the last year is what's going to bring jobs into this community. As you see some of the development on Government Street, which is great. I mean, I'm one of the owners of Electric Depot, so we invested in that project. But also understand that, you know, job creation has to be more, you know, more than just like restaurant level jobs. You know, that doesn't build wealth for people. So understanding those type of things. So, you know, a thing I say a ton is that community revitalization is going to take more than us just being that one seat at the table. We're going to need the banking world, the nonprofit world. Local government is you know, really important, and getting local government to especially invest in, you know, both housing and economic development type things. So like I said, it's at times challenging, but you know, it's interesting to, you know, see some of these things come together, you know, to see things like the road diet and what does that, you know, what has that done at Government Street. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but we're about to have a $10 million investment by the MOVE EBR into Terrace Street from Holland Road to Perkins. So, you know, there's going to be street lights, bike lanes, but on Terrace from Holland Road to Perkins will be totally redone in like the next 18 months. And it's crazy, I didn't even know about it. I was really just looking on the MOVE EBR site one night and was like, oh, Terrace Street is one of the streets that, you know, and like had a full design for it and stuff already. And you know, so, and all of those things work together to like revitalize a community.
I did not know about that
Yeah,
Street either. And did anybody else know about that one? Did everyone? Cool.
No. And I mean, I think they're actually they're about to be in the design has been accepted, and they're about to be in like the bidding stage of it, of like who's the contractor, you know, gonna be. I'm working with the DDD on some of the sidewalks, you know, so the connector on Louisiana was done, some of the sidewalks, so now we're looking at, you know, doing some of the side streets like Spain and some of the other streets to be able to make sure that, you know, we have sidewalks throughout the community. And you know, it's sometimes it's frustrating because, you know, things for me sometimes like sidewalks and street lights, you know, with us paying taxes, you know, I feel like those things should be given. You know what I mean? But also, you know, it's also important to like, you know, let your local council member and stuff know that these things are important, and figuring out, you know, right now one of the things we've been talking to Energy about is how do we identify what street lights are out. You know what I mean? So is it going to be tying an orange, piece of tape around the street lights, and those different things. Also, some of the things that are happening, like Lincoln Theater, figuring out how those things can really be useful to the community and add value to the community. So Ms. Brenda Perry and the Louisiana Black Hall of Fame, they've been working on that project now for 15 years. And it will open next year. I actually was just reading the construction updates before I came over here. So figuring out how do we use arts and what value does that add to the community? How does that create jobs for people within the community? So it's an ongoing journey. I tell people a lot of times that I feel like we're in the early innings of a baseball game, and truth be told, as someone who I live in this neighborhood, I literally live right across from St. Francis Xavier, my business in this neighborhood. I'm excited to see how it's going to turn out.
So you mentioned the Lincoln. What about the hotel?
So Lincoln Hotel, we just 2 months ago we got a home fund allocation of $675,000 for affordable housing. We've already gotten about $307,000 in community development block grants. We're up for the National Trust grant. We're about 300,000. We have about a 300,000 gap, but I'm pretty confident. I met with the mayor about 2 weeks ago about them upping their home fund allocation. So if anyone has any relationship with the mayor's office or Councilman Coleman, definitely any support we can get. Because as we bought that building pre-COVID, construction costs went really up. The building's on the National Registry, so that really kind of limits some of the things we can do. For example, like we can't put central AC and heating in there. We have to do mini splits in every room because the space between the floors is not enough. So a typical building of that size probably would cost me about $200,000 for HVAC. That building's going to cost me right at $375,000 in HVAC cost because of all of the mini splits. Where do we place the mini splits? Because the compressors can't be in sight because of the historic building. So that building has been one of my biggest lesson after lesson on just construction wise and working, with an old historic building. We can't change the size of the elevator. So there's literally like 3 companies in the state that's able to produce an elevator that small. And it's like not one of those things that makes it cheaper because it's so small. It actually makes it more expensive because it's kind of a very unique situation where we can't change the elevator or we can't change the width of the stairs. So it's been an interesting journey with that building, but I'm pretty confident that we'll get that building construction started this year. We did our asbestos and lead clean out last year. That's when we had some construction going on. And we really did that honestly so our permit wouldn't expire. So we needed to do something so the permit wouldn't expire. So we did all the asbestos and lead clean out. And now we've been meeting with the mayor trying to get them to up their award to allow us to begin construction on that building.
You also have the Valley House, which we've done a story on before, if y'all recall. Is located right at the railroad tracks. You can see it from the electric depot, the big brick building.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about
So that's a project we're still trying to figure out. It's interesting times with looking at doing potential retail right now with where the economy is. So we've just been kind of sitting on that project. We actually found out in the last year that the front part of the building, which we thought was the original Valley House Saloon, actually wasn't. It wasn't. The building actually burned down in 1919 and was rebuilt in the 20s. And ever since then, it always had been something connected to automotive. So the front building was like some type of automotive deal. And then during World War II, a tire company bought the building, and they're the ones that started adding the warehouses onto the back. But I always saw this article about a fire on Government Street in 1919, and we finally figured out that the fire actually burned down the original saloon. That was what burned it down.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are a lot of industrial buildings. There's a lot of industry in this area of town, and you are now the owner of many
the Pearl Beer. I mean, you know, historically in this neighborhood, and it's kind of an interesting story. You know, we're looking at this strip along the you know train track, and I mean also in the sense of I was talking to one of my elders about, you know, because I always assumed that we're talking about the neighborhood, like when did the neighborhood start like really turning, you know, to where it's at. And, you know, my thing that I always just assumed in my head was drugs, you know, and, you know, one of my elders was talking, I was talking to him one time, he was like, nah, he was like, Kimble, he was like, you know, at one time I could go to McKinley High School, get an electrical or welding certification, and then I could walk back in this neighborhood with one of these industrial companies along the train tracks, and he was like, I can get a job. And he was like, and we also were having this conversation about like college, and he was like, you know, kind of when the tide turned from like certifications and trades to like everyone goes to college, he was like, that's when the light at the end of the tunnel. And this conversation also was about truancy. Because I would have been one of those people before I stayed in this neighborhood. When you talk about, you know, sometimes truancy numbers being around 50%, I would have said BS. 50% might be on the lower end. We're looking at some of the kids in this neighborhood. Like most of the 15 to 17-year-olds I know in this community that live in the 6 to 8 blocks from this neighborhood, from this building, they're not consistently going to school. And I know many of them that don't go to school at all. And you know, my question to my elder was like, when did truancy get so bad? And he was like, well, when we all start saying go to college, and like the reality is for most kids who live in this neighborhood, they don't know anybody that college has worked out for. When I talked to them about my college journey, you know, Stanford undergrad, 2-lane grad school, that's not something that they usually can relate to, because I don't know anyone in my family that has ever did that. So that was what my conversation that kind of led to. He was like, well, Kimble, like I used to go get welding. I knew I could come in one of these companies and I could, you know, get a job, you know, welding or something. And he was like, it was a light at the end of the tunnel that a lot of these kids don't have. And he was like, you know, think about this part. My mom can't take care of me and provide for me. And we were talking about one kid in particular. When I realized the reason this kid probably wasn't going to school because he didn't have hot water at his house. And he smelled, and he didn't want to go to school probably because he probably was going to get teased. I'm not old enough to like not relate to like, hey, you know, if you come to school smelling, someone's going to, you know, probably, and we have showers back here because we have a gym here, and I told him, I was like, hey, if you ever need to shower. And then I was talking to one of my elders about it, and he was like, yeah, like, the light at the end of the tunnel is just not there for kids, because if a mom can't even provide food and hot water for me, what makes you think I'm gonna go to college for 4 more years and my mom's gonna be able to help me at all? He was like, it just doesn't make sense for a lot of the kids in this neighborhood who parents are already struggling on them to get by. And you know, the honest part of it, you know, they can't, if my mom can't really provide food and hot water for me, like she really can't take care of me already. So, you know, that was one of the conversations we were having. That's, you know, why the workforce development and job creation piece over the last couple of years has become really important for me, because like you have to be able to create opportunity, and then also for kids be able, not just create opportunity, be able to connect those dots of like, if you do this, do this, do this, you know. And that's why with a lot of kids in this neighborhood I talk to about, you know, being a plumber, being an electrician, you know, trades where like, hey, I'm not telling you to do this your whole life, but hey, you know, go get this certification from a BRCC or AccuTemp or something, you know, get a job, you know what I mean, make you some money from the time you're 19 to 24, and then figure out what your dream is. And you know what I mean? Or if you enjoy that, keep doing that. Because that's a lot more realistic to some of these kids than saying, hey, I'm gonna go to college for 4 years and you know, my mom's gonna be able to chip in, I'm gonna be able to eat. And I mean, we all went to college. We know it's not easy, like going to college, working a full-time job, trying to pay for housing. And if, you know, I live in a house that don't have hot water, or, you know, I mean, this kid in particular I'm talking about, every time he worked for me, his mom would take his check. So like that just doesn't like make sense, you know, or like I can't connect the dots on that. So that's why this piece of job creation has become such a like important conversation amongst the folks I work with, because to have a thriving community, people have to have employment. To have people, and I always tell people a lot of times, like, we all know what a thriving community looks like. You know what I mean? It's not rocket science. It's, you know, it's having businesses within the communities, having banks within the community. When you look at the last 40 to 50 years in this community, the only things that have really flourished have been the churches. I mean, and if you look from North Boulevard to LSU, I think we have like 51 churches. And the honest part is, you know, I'm a strong believer, but churches don't really produce jobs. That's just the reality of it. And also, you know, we have a lot of land owned in these communities, and churches are not typically developers of property. They get things donated to them. So that has created a interesting dynamic in these communities where, like most thriving communities, banks and businesses are at the heart of the community. We're looking at communities like this. The church has been at the heart of the community, and not anything is wrong with that, but money doesn't typically flow like that. And for money to flow, you have to be able to have businesses, create jobs, and have banking institutions that loan that money out. That's how thriving communities work.
Does anybody want to ask a question before I dominate?
I was looking at the website. What's the deal with the roof? Is that like a...
So, man, we're gonna finish off the roof. The crazy thing, to be able to do things on the roof, we have to get a liquor license.
What?
Yeah, to be able to serve alcohol and stuff as an event space, you have to have a liquor license. Yep.
Yeah. No matter what, no matter if you're going to have alcohol up there or not? Or?
Well, the honest part of it is most people who want to have events want to have liquor. I mean, just to be honest.
A BYOB situation would not work?
To have liquor, you're supposed to have a liquor license. You're supposed to have a liquor license. And for us, the honest part of it, we're going to do some things on Government Street at the Valley House building where, you know, we'll have more established spaces. It kind of was a conflict to have events here on the weekend and have people having to walk past people's offices. And even from my office, I mean, we keep all our checks in there, all our debit cards for all of our developments and stuff like that. And we had one time where some things went missing, and it just became like kind of a conflict of interest. You know, for me, this place needs to be an office space. The majority of our tenants pay for their office space here. So, you know, and then the other thing is just like the cleanup around events. We would have to have people in there Sunday night cleaning up, so my tenants are not walking in and, you know, it looked like a party just ended. So for us, the more important part of right now for me is to get businesses operating in this community rather than to have, there's other places in the neighborhood where you can go have events. My biggest thanks for what we're doing in the ecosystem and also for the community around us is to see businesses operating within this community.
So I have an interesting thought. You guys, we don't get the opportunity to talk to developers very often, but we as bike people have lots of thoughts for developers. So how about this? Anyone have any thoughts that they want to share with a developer about what you might like to see in neighborhoods for people who are on foot or bikes or things? I know you can't control the sidewalks and you can't control those things, but there's some other stuff. What are y'all thoughts? Yeah, don't get quiet now, come on.
Would another community bike shop similar to front yard bikes be useful, or is that just outside of the scope of what's going on here?
Man,
I actually would prefer to talk with you one-on-one on this kind of question, but
Yeah.
the question's out. So the question's out.
Yeah, as a bike rider, I would love to see it. I just don't think, I don't know if it's economically feasible. And I think that's the important part. With even looking where front yard bikes moved, I think that's a more economically feasible location for them. You know what I mean? And that's just the kind of the line you have to straddle in a neighborhood like this is making sure you have the consumer base for your business to be successful. You know what I mean? And like, it's an interesting piece. And then like for me, for example, you know, no one here would want to see it, and I wouldn't want to see it. That's why I hadn't do it. I could put a liquor store in the front of the Valley House, and that'd probably be one of my most feasible businesses in this neighborhood. Would I do it? No. But you know, then looking at like some of the other businesses that have been pitched to me, I'm like, you know, for example, like hair salons and stuff like that. Is it as economically feasible? And I mean, I've even pushed for things like, you know, urgent care medical facilities, and then when you talk to who your partner's gonna be or the provider, they're like, the demographics don't work. When you know, and most big business is based off like demographics, and you know, you gotta think about it like this. It took us years just for the demographics of a grocery store to make sense downtown Baton Rouge. And the demographics still downtown Baton Rouge don't work for a CVS or Walgreens or anything like that. And that's why you don't see them down there. And so it's like one of the things that like, you know, and then the next thing becomes like, most people are gonna say, I don't wanna see displacement. Well, the reality for this neighborhood to transition and become like a thrive, there's gonna be some displacement. That's just the reality of it. Because if you wanna see, you know, the housing values and stuff go into this neighborhood, we need to have people that come into this neighborhood that are willing to spend 150, 200, 250,000 on their houses. So even for me as a developer, it's a fine line that you have to play of like, how do I appreciate the neighborhood and make the values go up and just not have like outright gentrification. You know, and then, you know, for me, it's like, you know, another part of it is like, I got to take care of my family. Like, the reality of it, I can go to Gonzales, Zachary, or any places and build spec homes and make a whole lot more money than I make now. Tons more money. But, you know, wouldn't be as, I wouldn't get the same level of like fulfillment or impact or purpose. But I can't tell everybody to choose that. You know what I mean? Because I don't know like what your financial situation is compared to mine, or what your family situation is compared to mine. You know what I mean? I can't tell somebody with 4 kids and say, hey man, you need to be worried about impact when you got 4 kids to feed. So like those are all of the like things that are in play. But you know, going back to your like, I would love to see a bike shop. But then when you look at like your customer base within the 0.5 to mile radius of your business, the numbers are probably not going to work in your favor.
What would you define as like what's your boundary? Where are you kind of working with it?
I would say north to Dalrymple, Park Boulevard to the freeway. I would say really is our boundaries. And really a lot of it for us is around the Eddie Robinson Historic District. Probably 80 to 90% of our projects are historic tax credit projects, where we're getting both state and federal tax credits as part of like our capital stack. And the reality is without those tax credits, a lot of our projects, without being able to get those tax credits and monetize or sell them, a lot of our projects wouldn't work. I mean, I live right across from St. Francis Xavier. I don't know, the White House with the solar panels and stuff on it. When I bought that house in 2014, and it needed a lot of work. I bought the house for 15 grand. That house appraised for right over 200,000 like 2 years ago. And we're in kind of this weird spot too, where now we have houses that are appraising for more than what you could sell them. Because when you look at the census tracts and like the comps, you know, a lot of our comps are being pulled from Beauregard Town or like right off Highland Road and that Nicholson kind of area. So we're kind of in this interesting time where like the houses are really appraising for more than like what you probably could sell them. The highest numbers we're seeing is probably right here off 17th. That Mark built. Those houses are, I think, selling for $225, $230 as when they were new construction. And that's also the thing too that you see with a lot of consumers. Their preference is around new construction. That's where you're going to get your highest price per square foot. Right now, a lot of the houses, and we don't sell a lot of stuff, so I'm probably not the best guy to ask. We hold on to pretty much everything and rent it. But we're typically buying houses anywhere from 20 to 50,000, and then just putting around 100 grand in them, and then renting them out. Getting some, you know, getting about 25K in tax credit, selling those, and then just holding on to them. And we'll start selling a lot of our houses probably in like the next 3 to 5 years.
Before I ask more, okay.
I'm Steve, and I'm a park ranger now, so I don't have much time to do the things I used to do.
Okay.
But I live on Tulip on this side
Mhm.
of the park, and I run a green lawn business out of my house.
Okay.
Pull your lawnmower on a trailer behind your bicycle.
Okay.
And I'm getting a lot more work again, and I don't have time to do it.
Okay.
I want to give it to someone. The
Okay.
whole reason I keep doing it is I want people to steal the idea.
Mhm.
It's like, I'll show you how to do it. I'll even give you your first mower. It's all solar, it's all,
Man.
charge solar on my house too.
Man, take a number, cause I got some guys who do some lawn work, and you know, for us, and I mean, I keep a group of guys that I try to just, you know, have them do odd jobs, you know, cause I'm a true believer in employing people from the neighborhood. And the other part too is like, I didn't grow up in this neighborhood, you know, even though I went to McKinley Middle and I know a bunch of people in this neighborhood. It's been important for me to continue building relationships in this neighborhood. You know, they watch over your property. I mean, literally someone stole my bike a couple months ago and somebody literally brought it back to me. You know what I mean? You know, I try to have really good relationships. So, you know, definitely I'll give you my contact, and then you definitely, you know, I'll definitely try to, you know, find some guys, you know, who to give the work to.
And I'd like to see some of them who want to start their own business.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna walk through it. Tommy Talley offered to set up my advertising.
Okay. I know
I
Tommy.
don't have time.
I know Tommy well. I've known Tommy for some years.
This is a man who doesn't just talk. Everything he says is followed up on, by the way, so, Harrison.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you, how diverse is the community around you?
It's getting more and more diverse. I mean, it's, you know, I would say 5 years ago, it was more predominantly, you know, black. You know, I mean, so with some of the new construction stuff, you're seeing more white families move in. And I think, you know, what you're going to see probably over the next 5-7 years is, you know, let's be honest, a lot of people are getting priced out of the Garden District in Beauregard Town. So this is going to be, you know, their option, especially as you see more development on Government Street. I think, you know, you're going to see, you know, kind of those neighborhoods, you know, kind of come, you know, people more and more. And I mean, you're seeing it, you know what I mean? And the other part too, as you have bike lanes on Government, bike lanes on Terrace, I think it makes a difference. And you guys see it. When you ride bikes through, and I ride my bike a lot, I notice so much more when I ride my bike. I've literally found properties that I just, when I'm in a car, I just don't see. But when I'm on my bike, I'm like, oh, I never noticed that house sitting 30 feet off the street, you know what I mean? So I think that's another part of it is like, as you know, you have more, and I'll tell you another, really difference maker, and people don't look at things like that terrace exit, Terrace Avenue exit off the interstate. What that leads to is people getting off the interstate. I'm going to the Garden District. I'm going, towards LSU, Nicholson Highland, and it's going to be one of those things. If I work at LSU and I could be right there on Terrace, and I can jump on Nicholson, you know what I mean? It's going to be convenient to, I think another interesting piece that a lot of people are not thinking about, that I tell my mother-in-law all the time is, it's going to be interesting. Like, they're calling this interstate an expansion. We're literally rebuilding. We're rebuilding the interstate. It's not an expansion. It's a rebuild of the interstate. You can't just say that. They don't want the public to say that because everybody would go into uproar. But that interstate is literally getting rebuilt. The traffic issues you're going to see coming from like Bluebonnet, Segan Lane, all the way out to like Gonzales and Ascension Parish. I was talking to some of the engineers with, because I have a house in New Orleans, so we live in New Orleans on the weekend. And I asked one of the guys from Bro Brothers, like, when would you drive, to New Orleans, based on, he was like, literally in the middle of the night. He was like, because you're gonna see traffic times once they, close, at times when they're closing the split, and once this, over the lakes, you're going to you're going to 2 lanes. It's going to be really interesting, like what that does to people's travel times. And I think that's also going to lead some people saying that, hey, I'm tired of driving an hour getting from Segan Lane, and I'm just going to live closer if I work downtown. Because I mean, if you work at the state, LSU or something like that, most likely you're not going to be remote forever. And like those places, LSU and the state buildings, they're not moving. That's where your location is going to be. My mom works at the U.S. Attorney. My mom has to go to work, and they're not moving. They're going to be there. It's not like she can say, hey, can I get an office off Bluebonnet? You know what I mean? No, you have to go to the U.S. Attorney's office. So I think that's going to be another interesting piece that I want to see how it impacts some of these inner city communities too, with like, the travel time, for people that it used to take me 30, 40 minutes to get to work. Now it's taking me an hour, hour and a half. How does that impact like where I'm living?
Okay, last question then is, go ahead, please.
Are you familiar with makerspaces? Like the one in Houston, I think there's one in Alvin.
No, I'm not.
It's sort of a community shared, like they might have a welding machine and you buy a membership to it, you can go and get trained and use it,
Okay.
table saws and stuff like that. And some
Yeah.
people buy a shop space inside of that to start little businesses like, building furniture and stuff like that.
And it's called Makerspace?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look that up. Makerspace, I'll look that up tonight. I'll be working. I'll definitely look that up.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I'm definitely giving me something to look into.
Because there could be a training aspect to it for young,
Mm-hmm.
people who train, and plus you draw in money because people pay memberships to this.
I'm definitely gonna look that up. Appreciate that.
So my last question is, how can we help you?
Man, I would say, like I said earlier, anyone who has connections, council member, just, it's one of the things that we've been trying to just more and more let local government know how important it is for them to have a seat at the table. I mean, the biggest business in Baton Rouge is our local government in the sense of like their budget, $1 billion budget. And at the end of the day, for communities like this to truly transition, local government typically has to see at a table, especially if we just don't want to see a ton of displacement, values going up where like people can't afford rent and stuff in this neighborhood. So I would say that's one thing. And I would say for me too, is just, I love having open communication with people who do care. And I'm not I'm not a super formal person. Like I'm not a person like, hey, let's send my email. It's like, feel free to just share my cell phone number and, just shoot a text, you know what I mean, any way, or things you guys see, because I think that's one of the things I'm trying to develop, you know, and I have some some property in Spanish Town, and at times, you know, my folks in Spanish, they drive me, I love them to death, but one thing I do take from Spanish Town that like I'm trying to bring in this community is like that people care about their community and people communicate. And you know, we don't always have to agree on things, but like that dialogue is super, super, super important.